everyone, CWD Music here. I am CWD, and this is going to be another addition to the segment, the monthly album roundup, where pretty much I go through a good chunk of albums that I listened to this past month, and I have some kind of opinion on them. Crazy, right? I haven't got a chance to review any of them for obvious reasons, since the channel is kind of on hiatus with reviews at the moment. I do want to apologize for the severe lack of activity. I did pledge that I was going to get reviews out for albums that I loved, and unfortunately I've been procrastinating that, given how pressing work and school has been. Plus there's been quite a few things going on in my personal life that demanded my attention, so that was kind of a hinder to the channel. But rest assured, I'm going to be getting the channel back on track this week, and I've got actually a lot of reviews recorded on my camera that I need to go ahead and edit. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get this album roundup thing on the road. This is a weird record. I almost guarantee you that you're not going to be able to hear any kind of album coming out this year that is going to sound anything like it. It's like a weird Baroque pop soul thing that I can't really describe accurately. There's just something about when I was hearing this record, I kept it feeling out of place for some reason. I feel like that Benjamin Clementine's sound is so idiosyncratic that it's kind of alienating to me slightly. But still, if you are looking for incredibly unique music, if you are looking for music that has sort of a political undertone to it, then definitely give this album a try. You'll get something out of it. Yeah, this didn't do much of anything for me. When I heard that this was one half of Fuck Buttons, I thought this was going to be very interesting electronic music, but lo and behold, it was actually just indie rock and alternative rock, and yeah, there just wasn't anything that was adding on to all the other indie rock and alternative rock that came out in the recent years that I found very intriguing and very solid. But if you are a fan of Fuck Buttons and you want to know what the other guy is doing, then definitely check this album out. This music is for the club. And if you like going to the club, if you like dancing, I don't know a single human being who don't like dancing. Even the ones that say they don't like dancing, give this album a try, because it is funky, upbeat house music for what feels like a whole hour. And it's a one-dimensional faux show, but definitely give this album a try. Yeah, this was pretty interesting. It's definitely a departure from the weird psychedelic folk music that Daydream made on their debut album, and it definitely has me intrigued with what kind of direction Daydream would come in to once they actually put out a full-length album. This is billed as, I guess, a mini-album slash EP, and it definitely feels that way given the fact that it's only 20-something minutes long. A bulk of the length of the record comes in the form of 2 tracks that are well over the 5 to 6 minute mark. So if you are wondering what Daydream is doing since she dropped her debut album, then yeah, definitely give this a try. When I first heard this record, I was initially disappointed that it wasn't weird. Since most proteges of Arca, since most signees to Warp Records usually lean in sort of a weird electronic direction. Take FKA Twigs for example, take Bjork for example, take Kanye West, kinda sorta. But after just kind of letting the music kind of soak in after more listens, I definitely was impressed with how beautiful the production was and just how compelling of a vocalist Kelela was on this record. She sings a lot about heartbreak and I guess sensuality, and I definitely dig that. There's just something about her syntax and her language on the record that definitely suggests a lot of life lessons learned within relationships and things of that nature. and I definitely love that a lot about this record. So if you are looking for an alternative R&B record that pulls no punches, if you're looking for beats and production that is immaculate and well put together, it feels alive pretty much, and not just the same thing over and over, then definitely give this album a try. You'll definitely get something out of it. Kelela impressed me when I first heard her on Danny Brown's record Atrocity Exhibition, and she's definitely expounded upon that with a whole full-length record. Yeah, I'm a hardcore Beck fan at heart. I love Beck. Beck is like one of the single most influential and enigmatic figures in indie rock music, considering the fact that he doesn't adhere to one single genre throughout the course of his career. He's done anti-folk, he's done regular rock music, he's done alternative hip-hop, he's done folk, straight up country rock. There's just no boundary Beck has when it comes to sonic experimentation. I dug Morning Phase a lot. I thought it was a nice sister album for the album Sea Change, and I was definitely curious as to what kind of direction he would go into next following Morning Phase. Sure enough, he did another stylistic 180 and released a funky, house-driven, psychedelic pop record. And it's not really one of my favorites in his catalog. It's not even going to be a favorite of mine for the year. But I definitely was pleasantly surprised with how well executed it was. It's pretty brief. It's only maybe 38, 41 minutes long. It's not really going to drive your patience. I was actually kind of skeptical of this record when I heard Wow and when I heard Dreams, but hearing these album versions of these particular songs and all the other songs on this record, yeah, I definitely dug this album quite a bit. It definitely sates the Beck fan that it was within me, and if you're looking for a poppy, psychedelic sort of funky record, then definitely give this a try. If you're a hardcore Beck fan, this is definitely a no-brainer for you and should not be any surprise to you whatsoever. I think the biggest highlights for me on this album were the opening track, the lead single to the record, and when Kurt Vile covered Courtney Barnett's Out of the Woodwork. Because that's pretty much the basis of this album. They conceived a couple of songs together, and for the rest of it, they kind of cover each other, and I think they definitely complement each other's sound well enough. I just didn't feel like returning to it all that much, given the fact that it's pretty samey throughout the course of the record. It's like 48, 50 minutes long. When I heard that they were going to be doing an album together, I was hoping it would be straight up original music, and it wasn't, but the outcome wasn't bad at all. It was actually pretty decent. This album reminds me of the album cover. It's pretty much nothing but just kind of laying down, staring at the sky, watching a jet slowly go across. And people that are into that kind of catharsis are gonna love this record, but I did not. I actually dislike this record a lot. I don't know where King Krule's mind was when he thought expanding this to over an hour's worth of music was a good idea. It's a cool idea with 40 minutes, but once you reach an hour, it's like, why? This is definitely my favorite album this month, and it hit me with surprise, like, out of nowhere. I did not expect to love this thing as much as I did. The album itself expands upon the lyrical themes that were hinted on her previous album, her self-titled, I believe, except instead of just otherworldly stuff that was mentioned on tracks like Birth in Reverse and Digital Witness, a lot of what she's talking about with this record is very real now, such as tracks like Pills, Masseduction, Los Ageless, Fear of the Future. There's a lot that sounds dystopian and pretty desynthesizing in nature, but like with many records that have came out in recent years, it's closer to reality than one would expect. After that, the instrumentals are incredibly varied. St. Vincent is definitely expanding upon her vocal chops with a lot of this. I feel like why I like this album more than her self-titled is because I'm getting more of her vocally. I'm getting more Annie Clark vocally and artistically, and that's definitely something that I love. So if you're looking for a new wave, noise pop / noise rock thing, some kind of amalgamation of all these different styles, and definitely give this album a try. You'll definitely like it a lot. Or not. I don't know. This is like a desaturated version of Poison Season. It's not bad or anything, I just felt like Destroyer wasn't really offering a whole lot with this record. It just felt like he kind of phoned it in and definitely just did the bare minimum with this project. There's an electronic element to it that I don't think really adds much of anything to. But as far as it being a Destroyer record, it's just a Destroyer record and it doesn't really do all that much. It's a good country album. This is a good country album, everybody. Everybody look out. It's a good country album, a solid country album right here. It's not that bogus, watered down, formulaic bullshit that's on the radio. It's a good country album, everybody. This is good, solid, down-home country. Willie Nelson is on it, for Christ's sake. I never really was too invested in Fever Ray's solo discography. I never really was that invested in The Knife either, although Shaking the Habitual is a really good record. A bit long, but still really good and definitely worth a try if you haven't listened to it yet. But my perception of Fever Ray was always that she was a sort of provocative force in electronic music, and someone definitely worth checking out. So I decided to give this album a listen after it was announced literally the day before release. As sort of an aside and a sort of a tangent, that's kind of the best way to drop your record, just announce it the day before, because there's not really going to be enough time for hype to build up and there be disappointment later. Add to that, when you're making weird music like with this album, there's not really a whole lot of other ways to market it without dumbing down your singles or whatever. The cool thing is you can make all this experimental noise and whatnot and drop it the day before, and you get a lot of attention for that. Sometimes not for the best of reasons, but other times for the music you actually put out. And with the case of this album, this is really, really good. It's eccentric, it is provocative in both lyricism and instrumentalism. The beats are pretty abrasive at moments, the beats are catchy at moments for sure. This is a sort of weird IDM type of music that I definitely would have expected from someone as intriguing a figure as Fever Ray, and I'm definitely pleased with the results of this record. So if you are looking for something of a weird and kind of idiosyncratic nature, then definitely to give this a try. It's not idiosyncratic to the point where it's going to alienate you unless you're just absolutely not familiar with this kind of music whatsoever. This is one of those times where I got morbidly curious one day and decided to understand the hype behind an artist, because Julien Baker had a lot of hype surrounding her for some reason, even though she's only existed for maybe a few years on a solo front. Plus articles on Pitchfork and Consequence of Sound and Rolling Stone just love bringing up the fact that she's a lesbian and she's also simultaneously Christian, as if that's something relevant to her music directly anyway. So I decided to go ahead and give this album a try and see what all the fuss was about, and I was pleasantly surprised by this thing. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. It's not really all that complex or anything. It's mostly Julien Baker herself. Beautiful vocalist, by the way. Her voice took me by complete surprise. And sort of an electric guitar, an acoustic guitar of sorts at times. sometimes piano chords here and there, and some string hanging in the background every now and again. Think like a well-produced Nick Drake of sorts. You know, sort of brighter, later era Nick Drake, minus all the other bells and whistles. It definitely feels like that she is the prime subject of everything around this album. She is the center of the universe of this album. Think like that. It's definitely sort of a stripped back and kind of sort of minimalistic kind of setting that she puts herself in, and it's compelling. It's definitely really compelling. I do wish that there was more passion in her vocals at moments, because I feel like that she saves like her higher pitch and her energy for like the last couple of bars of certain songs. I kind of wish that the apex or the climax of each song was delivered sooner instead of like literally the last few seconds of the song. But still, I definitely dug this album a lot, surprisingly enough. If anything I just described is interesting to you, if you're looking for sort of laid back indie rocks, if you're looking for singer-songwriter music that is big while simultaneously intimate, then definitely give this a try. And finally, one of my most disappointing listens of the year. Not to say that this was horrible, I definitely found a few tracks to be redeeming of Weezer. I just felt like that after hearing the White Album, I was kind of scared hearing that they were going to be dropping another album this year as well. Plus, some of the singles weren't all that fantastic, unfortunately. Mexican Fender is pretty cool, and there's a couple of others, but for the most part, it just sounds like formulaic, dime a dozen Weezer, and that's not what I liked the White Album for. That's not what I dug about Everything Will Be Alright in the End. It really does sound like Rivers Cuomo didn't really try all that much with this record. It really does sound like that he's just on automatic when it comes to songwriting, and it just didn't really mesh with me all that well. Weezer as a band have always been sort of a hit or miss type of band for the most part, and this album is one of those miss moments. I'm hoping that the next record is significantly better, considering the fact that Rivers announced that the next record is supposed to be coming out May of next year. So, fair bit of skepticism, fair bit of optimism. I always look forward to hearing more Weezer, but yeah, I don't know if I'll be excited for that one, considering the fact that Pacific Daydream sounded the way it was. Just dime a dozen formulaic Weezer, and that's not something I listen to. That's not something I really like. So yeah, those were my thoughts on albums that came out this past month. What did you think of any of these? Did you like any of them? Did you dislike any of them? What were some records that I may or may not have mentioned in this video that I should maybe check out? And what did you think of those? CWD Music here, signing off.